The two coordinators today for this presentation are a perfect fit for the job. Sandra Begay is the daughter of a Navajo tribal leader and a public health nurse. She is a member of the Navajo Nation. Sandra earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from UNM and an MS from Stanford in Structural Engineering. She worked a few years at Livermore and Los Alamos before coming to Sandia, and has been at Sandia for 29 years, where she's a research and development engineer. For most of her career, she's focused on providing technical assistance to U.S. tribes and leading research to provide electricity from solar panels to hundreds of Navajo members. Sandra has mentored 42 technical American Indian and Alaska Native college students. 24 of them were women. These former interns have become highly regarded technical staff members, leaders within tribal organizations, industry, academia, and nonprofit groups. Sandra is a recipient of the 2021 Women in Technology Award from the New Mexico Technology Council and a bunch of other national awards. Sandra serves on the University of New Mexico Board of Regents as the board's secretary treasurer and is chair of the UNM Rainforest Innovations Board of Directors. That's this organization. Dr. Richard Lewarke is the other moderator today. He has a BA in economics from UNM, an MBA from New Mexico State, and a PhD in rural tribal relations from Arizona State University. Richard is president and CEO of Tafoya Ventures, a Section 17 federally chartered corporation wholly owned by the Pueblo of Santa Ana. Tafoya Ventures has the charge and responsibility to bring economic diversification, strategic partnerships, property and real estate development, and investment in the Pueblo and in the region. Most recently, Richard was instrumental in attracting Tesla to New Mexico and locating them on Santa Ana tribal lands. Strategic partnerships within global, regional, and local companies in science, technology, engineering, arts, and manufacturing industries are key targets for Tafoya Ventures' economic and asset development strategy. In addition, developing and investing in the property that is designated for economic development in Santa Ana is of equal priority. Richard has served in various local and national leadership roles, served on various boards and committees, including the Board of Trustees for the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, and has served 2 terms as governor of the Pueblo of Laguna. Sandra?
Thank you. Yeah, Dave, good morning. And I guess it's afternoon. I just looked at the clock. Welcome to the University of New Mexico Rainforest Innovations and its headquarters and building. This building was a dream of a few people, and having that come to fruition has been a joy to see and to be able to see it in use the way it was intended. What we'd like to see is having these conversations with people who are doing real work that can then maybe have collisions with each other in developing similar ideas, supportive conversations, and possibly partnerships and maybe some joint ventures. So that's the intent of the rainforest. So as you may see in our motto, which is displayed here in the building, you've got to put a little bit of rain on some seeds that may sprout and may not. But you've got to pay attention to our rainforest in the desert in order to make these seeds known about and to be able to give some of that water and attention to these businesses so that they can then build off of that and grow. It's been a highlight of my tenure on this particular board and UNM Board of Regents to be able to see something like we see today. I'm a very visual person, and I can see things in advance of what happens. And the clearer I have pictured in my mind, the better off it is for me, so that I can actually know what that might look like. So when Lisa and her staff thought about an idea for the EDA, I thought this was a wonderful way to support our tribes in our region and in local communities. The challenge is to reach out to those businesses, and you'll hear from our liaisons today a little bit of how do you reach out to these small businesses and developing businesses, because it could just be one spark of an idea that can get some rain from their tenure and their advice to then also be supported by Rainforest and the resources that we have, which a lot of these resources are online, but also, as you see today, in person. But I wanted to at least welcome the team here today. It's the first time we've all met in person. We've seen each other online, and yes, I am as tall as I look on Zoom. I will have some questions from the panel, but I wanted to give some time for Dr. Warren to say some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see all of you here, and welcome this afternoon, I guess. Welcome you this afternoon to this event. Had a chance to meet some of the folks here that you see up on the screen, and hopefully you're going to get some really great insight from all of them as well. Scott's actually been out to our area and visited with me out there. You know, as I stand here, being an entrepreneur myself, I've had two companies, Digital Migration, which was a IT company. And we did a lot of work with White Sands and Kirtland and groups like that. That was early 2000s. And then another company called Emerging Equity Solutions Group, where it focused more strategy, business development, those kind of things. And so now I work for Tafoya Ventures, as mentioned. But being from Laguna, Laguna, we've had a pretty strong history of economics and business development there as well. And so one of the things that I really want to be able to help begin to change the narrative on, and why I think this is so important, is when we look at any country and we look at business development and entrepreneurship, mainstream society starts us most times from a place of deficit. There's incredible talent in this room. There's incredible talent in our communities. We need to change the thought process and start from a place of strength. The talent, the genius, the intellect that you have. That's what we also have to extract. That's a gift from our Creator, and we should not be afraid of it. And I'll share with you, one of the things that you see in our tribal communities. You see all the social determinants, poverty, low income, all those kind of things. And when I think about it, in our language, right, we don't have a word, and maybe some of the other tribal languages, maybe they do, but in our language, we don't have a word that directly translates to mean poverty. You can describe it, but there's no direct translation. But there's words for abundance, for wealth. Ayush also, that's literally profit. So benefit, right? Yet we've allowed mainstream society to define us in a deficit mode. And we've embraced it, right? So the point I'm trying to make is entrepreneurship is not that. Entrepreneurship is the straight side. Right? And I think what we're going to hear today, I believe and I hope will help all of us to begin to change that narrative. Because it's not going to be one person or one company, it's going to take all of us. To not be afraid of that genius that you all have, we all have. To not persecute success, right? The whole crab in the bucket. Instead, let's celebrate. And as Secretary Hall, one of her phrases she always says is leave the ladder down. For those coming behind, you can climb it too. Let's leave the ladder down for each other. Right. So I just want to share those opening remarks, and hopefully that, this is going to be an afternoon. And I doubt it's, there's no doubt it's going to be, whether with Lisa and Sandra, and they do a great job at, getting these types of thoughts, going and provoked and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to working with all of these things. Thank you, Sandra.
I'm gonna join us up here.
Sure.
So Richard and I are gonna tag team, just so you know, to ask our panel some questions. If you know me well enough, I'll start on the surface so we have some basic common knowledge of our panelists. But then I'm gonna dive in a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, because there's unique circumstance of having this group and this panel together that I think, as Richard had said, not just only the word special, but honoring, respectful, and I will say just unique. I'm unique in my career, but that's just something you accept. You beat the statistics, and so these travel businesses that are operating and doing well today are also very unique and highly regarded. So I just want to start on the surface. So each of the businesses, if you would introduce yourself, your tribe, and also a little bit about what you want this audience to know just right out of the gate. We'll start with you, Angelo.
Thank you, Sandra. Hello, my name is Angelo McHorse. I am from Taos Pueblo in northern New Mexico. I co-founded Bison Star Naturals with my wife, Jacqueline McHorse. So I come to the Travel Entrepreneurship Program as a business owner and in a network of other business owners. And what I would like to do with my experience as an entrepreneur here in northern New Mexico is to be able to share my experiences and my knowledge that I've gained along this path of entrepreneurship and leave the ladder down, so eloquently put by Ms. Deb Holland, so others can follow an example. I hope to create a blueprint that can be easily followed, but also adapted to in each unique situation. And I'm proud to beat the statistics and to take back our narrative instead of having one put onto us by the mainstream society.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mytegia. I'll formally introduce myself. I'm from Navajo. I'm west of Gallup, Manuelito, Kinwazon. I am the Bethesda Nishleki Ani Bashishit Kabaha Dashiche and Bilikana Dashinam. And I came to the liaison position through being introduced to UNM via Vanessa Rainforest. At that time, she told me about a position that was available to be a mentor for UNM's Rainforest Innovations Program. I do executive directing for Southwest Native Assets Coalition. With that coalition, what we provide is home buyers education, credit counseling, and financial literacy. We also do small dollar lending and business lending with that sector. My history basically concludes of commercial banking, financial servicing, and social work. So that's a little bit of my background. I'm a mother of 3. I am a skilled silversmith and bilingual. I'm a role member of Eastern Agency, and yeah, a little bit about
That is a skill you need to learn about, is she can find somebody. You really need to find them on that one. She's like, no. Is that correct?
all I need is the last 4 of their social. Their CIB, RA number.
Good afternoon, everybody. Zachariah, Mytegia, Liaisons, and Schlef. Zeta Chini Bashichin, Ketachini Dashichi, Ashin Dashinale, Akos Ago, the net and the Schlef, Ado, Staff, Mary Band, or Shiaja, Yabit Folk Ben William. So, my name is Zachariah Ben. I was born and raised in Shippaq, New Mexico, and it's a 6th generation farmer. Our son is the 7th. And so, my wife and I, we co-founded Bidii Baby Foods LLC that's incorporated domestically with the Nation. And through that process of incorporating ourselves through the Navajo Nation, we realized how much red tape there was in the business development offices and organizations there that are supposed to promote and enrich small businesses. These resources, in a way, felt like there was so much bureaucracy that went with that. And so just as Richard and Angelo had mentioned, lead the ladder down. So what does that entail for us? And so with that, we started a traditional baby food line. And through that, we are establishing our manufacturing permit through the state of New Mexico because Navajo Nation doesn't have oversight. So many challenges that come up in the agriculture sector there for the Northwest region of New Mexico. Coming from an impoverished community and experiences, I want to build intergenerational wealth, starting with my son. And that is just more than monetary ways of being able to nurture and cherish those natural resources we have there at home that are so abundant. But how do we tap into that? How do we make it a part of building up our society and economics? And so with that approach, we have entrepreneurship, a social entrepreneurship for us as Indigenous communities, being able to get together, help one another, rather than diversifying and independently categorizing ourselves and working together alone in that way. So bringing together the agriculture parts and strengths of ourselves in order to incorporate that and move forward together as a cooperative. So I hear that. Thank you.
My name's Scott Tafoya. That is a name like Smith in the Anglo world. I come from Santa Clara Pueblo. My dad's side of the family is related. He's the son of Margaret Tafoya, one of the well-known potters in Santa Clara. My mom's from Mississippi. And so somehow they got together in the course of their lives, and got 3 other siblings that are back home. And so I grew up in Santa Clara. From Santa Clara, one of my heartbreaks is that I cannot give that introduction of myself in my own language. I grew up hearing it, and I don't speak it fluently. So that's still one of my dreams, to speak in my language. I still phrases sometimes in my head too. But anyways, my background and journey to this seat is from a background of ministry. I was graduated from college, graduated from college and was called into ministry. And so I went into ministry with after I got my training and ministered for over 30 years with our Native people. Pastored my home church for about 6.5 years. Went to the Blackfeet Nation, went to Gallup for a number of years, and then was here for about 17 or 18 years, pastoring a Native church here in town. But through the course of that journey, I became aware of a need in myself to be a better leader. I could care for my people, but I felt like I was failing in some sense in terms of leading them to where they could be. And so I pursued my education some more, got a doctorate of ministry degree, and out of that journey discovered professional coaching and got certified as a professional coach and launched my own company, Truth Dancer Coaching, with a focus on leadership development for our Native American people. So I've been working in that area for about 11 years, and I can relate to the journey piece of being an entrepreneur because I'm still working other jobs, so to speak, to see that become a reality, but that's still on my heart to see that take place and to help our Native people be everything and be who they can be and who they need to be in their world. And that impacts their journey as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, as well as other areas of life. And I've had experience owning another business as well, and led nonprofit organizations outside the church. And so I bring some experience to my to the table as well, along with everything else that I've been able to do. But that's my heart.
One more question for me, and then I'll turn the mic over to Rich. You're in a place really devoted to innovation, sparks, ideas, creativity. What event or person or could be a vision you had to launch this idea for your current business. I know you may have more than one business, but what was that spark? Who was that spark? What was the spark?
So in the case of Bison Star Naturals up in Taos, my wife and I had just had our first child, and I was in line as a wilderness ranger to be sent off to the federal training to become a fully fledged officer. And my wife had been making body care, like a soap line, and had been selling at local farmers market that I had managed before I had decided to become a wilderness officer. And it was really interesting how entrepreneurship came into the picture, because everybody thought I was crazy when I wanted to get out of a wilderness ranger position, which is a good job, steady pay. But of course, it has its restrictions as a law enforcement lifestyle. And so one evening, my wife and I, we sat down and we said, how are we going to live our life? What are we going to do? We have a brand new born, and we made a list of potential career opportunities and paths. But as you all know, in a rural environment, there really isn't that much opportunity. And so everything was on the list, from a woodman to a carpenter to, landscaping, what have you, just all these pickup jobs. And then finally, my wife said, well, we could try making body care. And I looked at her, we looked at each other, and we just decided, okay, let's go into a partnership. Let's jump off this cliff of entrepreneurship. And the motivation of entrepreneurship, where you give up a 40-hour in a week job for an 80-hour a week job, somehow seems more appealing, because ironically, it gives you more freedom, even though you work twice as much. And so you can also create your own priorities. You can also create your own lifestyle. But of course, you have to put in that sweat equity. You have to put in the work to achieve those dreams. And so seeing with my wife having a brand newborn, her body went through a lot of changes, and she couldn't use the same body care products that she had always been used to. You go to Walgreens, buy body care products there, that stuff wouldn't work for her. And so we realized that there was a demand for clean body care products. And so we started out as a bar soap company, and then we eventually created some of our own formulations that we now have the IP to. And those are scalable liquid products, such as shampoo, conditioner, liquid soap, foams. And we had bootstrapped for 5 years to get to the point where we are today. We still haven't leveraged loans. We haven't taken on any funders. We haven't given out equity of our company. And it's all been through a combination of living underneath our means and continuing to snowball our working capital into Bison Star to reach new levels of capacity for doing business. And so what motivated our move into entrepreneurship and to start our own business was the freedom and flexibility of creating our own priorities that are all culturally based and traditionally based. At Taos Pueblo, we value the land, we value family, we value our culture at Taos Pueblo and the religion of the Red Willow people where I'm from. And in order to live a life where we can balance our tradition, our religion, and the modern economic system, entrepreneurship was the only answer, where we can excel in all those fields equally and balance all those two things. And that's why Bison Star Naturals was born.
So I don't have a business, but what has led me to do and pursue the career choices that I have made are basically my grandparents. And anybody that is Navajo knows that we grow up in a matriarchal society. So the women in our communities are revered as the head of the household. And that's where a lot of our teaching comes from, right? Our mothers, we learn how to cook, we learn how to clean, we learn a lot of our patterns in life coming from our mother. She's our main teacher, the one that's always with you. Growing up, I didn't necessarily have that. It was my grandmother for me and the aunts of my family who did not have children. I came from a household that was West Tagalog, once again, in Manuelito, grew up in a home that did not have any running water or electricity. And I had to get on the bus at 5:30 every morning in order to get to the school by 7:45. And ironically, I was the first one on the bus and I was the last one off the bus. And I lived 3.25 miles back from the county road that led to, the I-40 that I needed to get to the bus stop. So a lot of the times, what I would always instruct my children, even now, because I have 3, I have a 20-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 17-year-old. I tell them all the time, growing up the way that I did, it wasn't as if there was a vehicle that was able to pick me up from the bus stop every day. And coming from a family that did ranching, it was basically my job to make sure that I got the cows from the cattle guard back all the way to the back of the canyon where we were at. And then, just living a ranch life and making sure that we had what we needed and did what we needed to do, and making sure that from a young age we learned how to, cultivate and not only just live off the land, but gain my education through experience. And so a lot of everything that I do and that leads me to what I do in nonprofit now, it comes from engagement of what I've experienced in my own life growing up, knowing that we live in communities that are underserved, they're underbanked, there's still not accessibility to a lot of resources that are common in cities. And even though we're outside of cities, we still have a lack of access. The home that I grew up in right now is barely going to get access to electricity by May. And that took my entire existence, along with the existence of my mother and my grandparents, for us to come this far. So, a lot of the jobs that I've had in the past have been my advocacy for my own people. And working in business development banking, I started in banking knowing that I was going to be a teller. And within a month becoming a business development banker, because they knew that I was able to communicate with my community members and communicate with my peers and local community business owners and whatnot. Growing up, like I said, we were silversmiths. So a lot of the business owners that were there knew my family because, like I said, once again, we lived off our land. We leased billboards to make sure that we had money to pay for expenses that we needed to pay for. We had a lot of resources that we were able to sell and live off of. And basically that just led me to do what I'm doing. And then just realizing that there was always that communication barrier. My grandparents only spoke Navajo and they lacked that education. I had a few of my aunts and uncles who didn't pursue education simply because of the fear of going to school and, being displaced, being taken from their families. So, we deal with that in everyday society, and it's just, there's not enough awareness on it. So the choice of me working in nonprofit now is me directly giving back to my own people and being that example for my children in my community and being an advocate and making sure that that awareness, the education, the persistence, and the voice is there. So.
For us, the creation of Bidii baby foods is very similar to Angelo's story about birth, the creation of life, and how that instinctually awakens those innate tools that are inside of us. That's, awakening those paternal instincts and maternal instincts. And so for me, my perspective on a lot of this was, when we found out we were pregnant, we were in the middle of a harvest season. And so, going from that into struggling with intergenerational trauma and experiences that, kind of just all become awakened again, because you have to revisit those ordeals in order to heal from it. And that was going to be my mission for myself to heal. And for myself, I think, moving forward, I wanted to be a good parent. I wanted to give the life that I never had, and also giving healthy trauma. And so with that, I built a cradle board for my son. I built a cradle board for him, and we had an at-home birth, no running water, no electricity. Our son was born March 9th, 2021. And then from there, we like to say that was the birth of our company. Moving forward from there, 6 months later, after harvest, we were able to then indulge in our produce, indulge in our harvest, and share that with our community, share that with our ceremonies. And we realized that there was no market for
indigenous, traditionally made baby food anywhere. Nothing in Canada, nothing in North America, nothing in Southern Americas. So what do we do to address this problem? We already have such a huge problem of food insecurity, lack of food access, no fresh produce for 3+ hours of driving if you live in the middle of the reservation. And so how do we address that? How do we address starting and preventing that? So we used our son to address those solutions and to bring up some solutions. That was, we're farmers. Why don't we bridge that gap? What does that entail? How do we do taxes? Do we need an LLC? Do we need a limited liability company? Do we need a corporation? Do we need a 501c3? How do we go about this? So we created a product first to experiment with. And then from there, when our son, had his first bite of that food, that was the type of reaction that we wanted for the rest of our community. The reaction of the labor of love. When you're out there, you're sweating away and you're farming, you have to irrigate those seeds that were planted. If you don't water them and nurture them and cherish them, they're not going to grow. So just as the motto in the Rainforest Innovations, we're farming in a desert. How do you do that successfully? How do you create a high output? How do you create a high yieldage of produce to feed more than just your family and ceremonies? So with that, just as RI, we have to move forward and innovate on those processes while still staying grounded, not commercializing it, not looking for a capitalistic individual gain. So these are all the things that we were thinking about dealing with the newborn. And then from there, after the reaction of his first bite, okay, let's share it with our community. So from there, we started milling down our product, sharing it with the community. They loved it. The reaction, the feedback, they loved it. They want more. And that's what they've been yearning for, was that type of spiritual food, that medicine, especially coming a year out of COVID, yearning for that healing out of grief, yearning for connection for one another. And that's where the farm provides that safe space. And not only did we want to address food insecurity, we wanted to address mental health, spiritual health, things that we overlook nowadays because we're so distracted by our external hard drives. Well, why don't we look at our internal hard drives? So that's what we instill into our products. I say products, but it's our food. So everybody has to eat. So what are we eating? What is the intake? How are you going to digest that? So we want more than just saying, this is Bidii baby foods, you can buy it for this much, contribute to our revenue. No. How do we use that net income in order to then create more programs to expand by allowing other farmers to, under this umbrella of a social entrepreneurship, where we can build them up as well? Because there's a demand. Again, everybody has to eat. And that led to the incorporation process. A very, very, it's just so much full of red tape and bureaucracy, which is very tragic. We were one of the first agriculture cooperatives to be established under the Navajo Nation. Wonderful for us, but why only us? We need more of this. And so moving forward, we invested all of the for 2022 season. We invested all of our savings, which was $20,000 out of pocket and plus. That's for above irrigation pipes, fuel, seeds, farming equipment. So in order to address just the economic status, our people, 70% of them make $20,000 in their yearly income. So you're going to tell a family to invest all of their yearly income into a farm and move forward with that and to save and to address those issues? What can we do to bridge that gap? Why don't we start a 501c3? So we started a 501c3 along with the LLC. This allows us to not only establish capital by investing into programs that will then umbrella and nurture these new independent farmers into becoming a cooperative,
but also allows us to expand our operations as well. So that way our overhead costs remain low, and with that low, product prices are low. So that equals that equitable approach is already established in terms of marketing, in terms of the product itself. And again, it starts with a lot of the principles that I outlaid there in the beginning. So that's how Bidii Baby Foods was created, that path that we're on, and how we want to continue to share and build that intergenerational wealth and enriching our economic landscape there on the reservation that has been historically underserved, impoverished, but that was a narrative that never existed pre-contact. How do we move out of that? How do we heal each other and reconnect with one another and reestablish humanity through a business? RI was the solution for us in that manner to continue to share these initiatives that will allow us to connect with each and every one of you today and to understand our experiences, relate, and move forward in finding those solutions. Yeah.
What inspired me to go down the road of coaching and then ultimately starting my own company came out of that journey of my educational process. When I discovered coaching, I'd always been in the realm, of course, of helping with a pastor. That's what we do is help people and care for people and do our best to nurture them spiritually and otherwise. But in my journey, I discovered coaching, and that just rang true for me in terms of the fact that we do need to take responsibility for ourselves. You know, in coaching, you know, there's a saying that you're the expert in your own life. And so it's not about me providing the answers for folks. It's about helping them to become aware of what they need and take the actions that they need to create the change that's needed. So that was the start of that journey. Is I just sort of fell in love with coaching. I was already on that road. And then as I continued to, you know, go through that training and decided to start my own company, I started off as a life coach. And then I said, well, I'll name the company. I'll change I named the company Dancing in the Truth Coaching. And as I continued to focus and try to find where I wanted to focus in helping people, I came on this leadership. So I was already on that journey of becoming a better leader, but I didn't realize that that's where it was going to end up. And so in that process, I actually stumbled upon John Maxwell. I had read some of his stuff in the course of my studies, I suppose, and some other folks as well. But I found out he was starting a team of coaches and speakers and teachers. And his expertise was leadership. And so I thought, makes sense for me to learn from somebody who has spent 40 plus years after their own career, ministry career of 30 years, and learn from him. And so as I did that, I landed on starting this coaching company and focusing it on leadership development for our people. So that's what inspired me to make that to focus on what that meant. Thank you for those responses. Pretty deep there on a couple of those. I guess the question I want to pose to you all is, you've all heard the saying, good is the enemy of great. If you're content at just being good, you'll never be great, right? And so going back to my opening comments, starting from a place of strength, not deficit. What do you think, what do you see right now as strengths that you can leverage to not only make your companies go from good to great, but how do you help your other natives that are pursuing that entrepreneurial path? And it's not limited to just on reservation or off, it can be anywhere. What is it that you're seeing in as a strength that will allow you to take your company from good to great? I'll start this side. I think the strength is my desire and my willingness and even my growing ability to take the reins of my own life. About a little over a year and a half ago, as I've gotten, I'm now 62, but I'm never going to retire. At least that's not the plan. Because I was already on this path for 7, 8 years. I had been a pastor. I had worked another job. I'm still a bus driver for APS. And I had my business. So I'm juggling all this stuff. But I think the strength that I'm seeing is that I have choices. And I've seen it for a long time. But as time has gone on, I see more pathways opening up for me to make some choices. And I'm also, because life continues to move on, I'm saying I'm not waiting anymore. And so a little over a year ago, I guess like 2 years this coming May, I stepped out of the pastorate. Not because that wasn't important, but because the greater good is the fact that we all, whether we're in that church world or not, we need to become everything that God made us to be. We need to be more. And I saw leadership development as speaking to that fact, defining that. Okay. And so I stepped out of the pastorate so I could focus more on my coaching company. And I continued to have to work another job. And I've talked to entrepreneurs in the course of doing this work, and some of them are doing the same thing. Spoke to one the other day. She's still working a full-time job and having to concentrate on her business on Sunday and Monday because she still needs to bring in enough income to make it a reality. That's what I keep saying to myself. I want to make my dream a reality. Okay. And so I'm still doing that. But last August, as I was at a Native Chamber of Commerce event networking, Cecilia approached me about this possibility of doing this work, and I looked at it and it fit what I'm doing. And so I said, you know what? This makes sense. This could be a stepping stone. If being honest, but this is the reality that we live in sometimes. And I see this as maybe a stepping stone so that maybe I can actually let go of a full-time job with my bus driving and transition so that I'm actually maybe even at some point doing my coaching work in my leadership development full-time. So I think what's giving me the power to do that is realizing and being willing to make the choices as time goes on and doing everything I can to say, okay, how can I do this? How can we make this reality? Because I have a wife as well. I have a family to support. My son is grown. But we have those concerns. Health insurance is another issue that entrepreneurs face that we have to deal with. And so, but that's what's giving me the power the freedom to move forward.
Strengths. I love this question because it really brings out those principles of ourselves and how we are able to not look at failure as failure, but learning growth out of that and being able to adapt to your surroundings in order to not ever fail. So with that, defining strength for us is culture, arts and culture. See, I was a sand painter before this, and moving forward into the farm, that simply became my canvas. Now I'm able to express my art, express my culture, and the exchange is not a visual one, where people come into the gallery and look at these beautiful paintings and pictures on the wall and say, oh, Navajo culture is beautiful, it's very colorful, I like it. How much? No, but to actually walk on the farm, breathe in those natural resources that we have abundantly, that we take granted for, unfortunately. So how do we change that narrative into saying you have all this without people getting upset with you? So moving forward, we forget one of our natural resources is the youth. The youth starts with our son, and moving from there, again, building those children into and nurturing them and giving them that safe space to thrive in, not a space for them to survive in. That's a major strength, because not only is your perception of success changed, you're not looking at it in dollar amounts, you're still looking at green though. Literal green of your landscape changing with corn, squash, and growing in that way. And so it's kind of ironic that we were singing planting songs on our way up, my brother and I. And you're probably wondering, where's your brother then? I brought a crew of manpower from Shiprock to help an elderly farmer here that is in dire need of help from his blackberry fields. And he has 4 acres of that, and he is struggling because his health conditions are worsening. And so he just got off an oxygen treatment before heading over to the farm. It's hard to push him back and say, hey, we got it, because he wants to be a part of that. He sees all the youth working with him, wants to be a part of that process. That's the exchange that we want to share. So as we speak here today, they're working over there, clearing up those fields for him. That is strength. That is strength that we overlook, because again, we're not looking in here anymore, looking out here. So I think that is a very great start in terms of strength. How we use that, not take advantage, not extract it, but use that to be a mutual beneficial tool to build ourselves up as a society.
My take on this is just experience. Once again, I think that a lot of what we offer, not only to entrepreneurs, but to society, is our experience and what we've learned. And the base point for everything that we learn is back at home. How do you learn in a home to be a contributing member to society? One of the main things that I thought to myself as young as 7 years old, sitting on the porch of my grandparents' house, was, how am I going to get out of here? How am I going to, I want to watch TV. I want to listen to the radio. I want to have electric. I would go to school and I would see these little kids that always have these, they're talking about the TV shows that they watched or whatever. And I always thought to myself, I'm going to get there. And when I get there, I'm never going back, But in a sense, that elevated my want to be better, to learn more. I started from a very young age of pushing myself to be an advocate for my family. I was the one that had to communicate. Letters came in the mail. Nobody knew what they meant. And I was sitting there reading them. Oh, this is what it means. This is what we need to do. When we were selling our jewelry, I was the one going into the jewelry stores, being the negotiator, No, we want $25 for a pair. We have 40 pairs. because we needed to make sure that we made a profit in order to reinvest so that we had money that we could fall back on. And my grandparents had money to pay our bills, you know. We still had to pay for the truck, we had to pay for grocery, we had to buy, you know, ice to make sure that we could keep our meat cold in an ice chest. You know, there was things that we needed to do. And so going back to experiences that I went through, it forced me to become an active member and not just talking about change, but being a part of the change. So I always take my experiences that I had from growing up and every job that I went to, every misfortune, every life experience and everything, and using that as a tool to say, okay, I've been here before, how do I get through it? And if you don't have the answer to it, ask them. You know, making sure that you have those resources, establishing those connections, making sure that you're doing any and everything that you can. And by saying being a part of the change, you know, for me, I went to the extent of becoming a member of Rotary, being a member of the local community pantry, being a member of Seroptimus International. Seroptimus International for me was a huge step because I was a domestic violence survivor. So for me, getting to be a part of that in my community meant that I was able to help other single mothers, you know, get out of that situation and use those platforms of saying, get a job, go back to school, look at these resources that are out there, you know, and taking everything that you went through and experienced to say, okay, this is how I would approach it, being that beacon of hope, being that beacon of insight, and just offering hope, offering yourself as a person. So that's short and sweet.
So one of the greatest strengths of Pueblo people and indigenous people, and particularly Taos Pueblo people where I'm from, is sustainability. Sustainability is something that's like a hot topic or a keyword these days, like it's some sort of new discovery. Well, when you look at indigenous cultures and they've been able to stay in the same place multi-generations for hundreds of years, for centuries, talk about sustainability. There's living examples of it all over the state of New Mexico. And when I think about sustainability, I think about Taos Pueblo and how it always has been a strong commercial center historically, where people would come from all over to trade at Taos Pueblo. And even though back then, before we had the current cash economy, it was all based on a barter system. Growing up in the village, you know, you all, in this day and age, your family has a Pueblo house. That Pueblo house turns into a shop and people sell all of their artistic goods out of that shop. So people even set up a table in the village. So there's an example of entrepreneurship right from the get-go whenever you grow up at Taos Pueblo, because there's hundreds of thousands of tourists that come to the village every day, and our people take advantage of that by offering awesome souvenirs, gifts, art. And so when I think about it, with that foundation, Bison Star Naturals is striving to be an example of great entrepreneurship, because we learned good entrepreneurship from the get-go, and we're scaling from a table in the village selling our products to now being on trade fair floors, where we're making national deals with wholesale partners all across the country. And we're going from a limited, localized, closed loop economy in our rural community of Taos to now opening up an unlimited global economy with multiple marketplaces where our products can fit in anywhere. And the way that we, myself, my family, my daughter, can continue our culture, traditions, and religion at Taos Pueblo is by utilizing entrepreneurship as a tool to go out into the world, gather knowledge, tools, and experiences to bring back home, to teach that and pass that experience, information, and knowledge back, and create a community of entrepreneurship that can survive outside of our traditional village walls. And that, in my mind, is what economic sustainability is having us indigenous entrepreneurs go out and be successful and on par with entrepreneurs out in the world, learning, networking, and bringing all that back home. So that way there is a pathway that can be followed.
Thank you, guys.
Now I'd like for our audience to ask some questions of our panel. And I always have a pocket full of questions, so. And let me give you the opportunity.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation. My name is Juanita, and I'm with the American Indian Chamber of Commerce. And my question is, what made you all push from the tabletop setting, the individual sellers? There's a lot of people out there that do sales on Facebook or just word of mouth sales. So what made you go from that to legitimate business? And what help did you get along the way?
Banner,
I'll start this one only because what I've seen with a lot of the individuals in our community, specifically mine in the areas that I work with in Southwest, Western, like basically Arizona and Western Mexico, is there's not a lot of accessibility when it comes to being in a border town. You're about 2 hours away from everything. And so we've got a lot of individuals that are in these communities that have items that they market, you know, just like he said, we have individuals that are silversmiths, we have individuals that weave, we have individuals that make a lot of cultivated items that we rely on, not only with our heritage, but our religion and our practices, things that we do. And there's not enough accessibility. That's what it is. So when you go somewhere, typically, even back in Manuelito, I'm going to keep going back to my own community, because even now, if I go off of that 3 miles from the main county road, I'm not going to have access to my cell phone. There's no internet. There is no Wi-Fi. And then you have that language barrier. So these individuals are not able to communicate and understand, okay, how do I use a cell phone? How do I create an email address? How do I get on Facebook? How am I going to market? How am I going to do this? A lot of the times they have to turn around and go to border towns or places where there's a swap meet that they can set up at to even be able to make a sale, you know, and a lot of times they're losing out on more of a sale than anything because they're having to travel 2 hours, putting gas, worry about feeding the individuals that they take with them, paying for that booth rent, and possibly not even making a sale, turning around. And you know, we're trying to make it more accessible and be out there and grassroots it to the point of where there's more accessibility, advocacy, and awareness.
Awesome. Good answer. Good answer. So in the case of my experience from going to a table to actually becoming an LLC, which is an incorporated business that can do business beyond the village borders, and then you can go into any state. It all comes down to 2 factors. Number 1, education. So education about crucial business, like how to do your taxes on your business, right? Even how to incorporate an LLC, how to, those are the 2 biggest things that will keep a person who's selling on a table from going and taking that next level. Because number 1, taxes are daunting. You know, you need to pay money. You need to pay somebody money to do your taxes for you if you're operating like that way. And then also an LLC, everybody wants to go on LegalZoom and pay $500 to get an LLC when you can just go down to your local small business development center. That's a grant funded program that will pay the $25 filing fee for you. And there'll be an expert there helping you figure out your business name, and then also telling you the benefits of incorporating, getting your tax identification number. They'll be able to open up your own bank account. You'll be able to write off all your expenses. You know, the Small Business Development Center is a great resource for anybody who's just at the table level wanting to incorporate. And that's what Rainforest Innovations and the Travel Entrepreneurship Program is here. You know, there's the University Center, the Lowell University Center. That's a resource that this program offers all entrepreneurs, so you can learn how to do all these things on your own. But most importantly, as a liaison, we're directly connecting you with the experts, like in the Small Business Development Center, giving you the email, the phone number that you can call, set up a contact, or set up a date to go in, make an appointment, and get the things that you need done. And the second thing that I was going to talk about is a lot of folks who are putting their stuff out on the table. This might be a side hustle. You know, they might have a main job. And so it's really easy to take the money that comes onto the table and stuff it underneath their mattress, right? That's what happens a lot of the time, just because it's extra income. But then when you realize the potential and the demand for the product or art you're offering, and you can see how that can be your full-time job and how it can completely take care of you, that's what's going to push somebody to go from being just a table business to like a full-time LLC. Is when you see you're a great silversmith and you can get high dollar value for the art you're putting out, and you have buyers and you have people, you know. And so those are the two things I would say: education about how to do business, about taxes, about incorporating, and about resources for business. But then also you have to, in order to take the leap to get an LLC, you kind of have to decide if your business or your products are going to be able to create a full-time income for you. So those are a couple of answers. Small business development centers, super underrated. You guys take advantage of them.
So tabletop to distribution and incorporating ourselves has been I guess, an enlightening process for us. I grew up, as in other words, hustling. Eating bags of steamed corn out. I traveled across the reservation, spending nights at county fairs, validation fairs, and growing up in that way, and also again as an artist, being able to do those processes, but not having a legitimacy to that in terms of incorporation, filing your taxes, having a site where you do manufacture your products. So moving from that, I think that's for me was a great eye-opener once we realized how unique we are as Indigenous people. You know, we're very creative, and with that creativity, how do we move forward into being legitimate in Western eyes, in Western systems? And so moving forward, I think, you know, we again, it was really based off of that reaction from our son. How do we make this available for everyone? Not just tabletop sales, not just e-commerce, not through a website, but how can we go a step further? So that enlightenment came from, it's kind of funny because at our 6 months checkup for our son, where it's kind of, you know, mandatory, but this is where they do their blood tests. This is where they, you know, start a baseline of their growth physically, check their temperature. And, you know, I was empowered as a parent, as a father, and how much I was already engaging with my family and my son. So I was like, due to COVID restrictions, you have only one parent in the back. So I said to myself, okay, I'll go in the back. You know, I want to see what this process takes, what, you know, what the checkups are about. So we went to the back, and this was the time also we were feeding our son Bidii baby foods for the first time. He was being introduced to solid foods that were our first foods. And so we went to the back, went through the nurses, talked with the doctor, and the doctor came to the nutrition part. She said, okay, what is your son's nutritional intake? I was happy, I was proud. We feed him our own food. We farm, we're farmers. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing that. The soil that you farm on is toxic. The water that you use is poison. Could you imagine how that made me feel? As a parent, as a provider, as a farmer? And within that moment, I immediately told her, well, obviously somebody here is disconnected, and that's not me, and that's not going to be my son. So I recommend you come out to the farm and farm along with us. And then you'll see the practices, you'll see the ritualization of these natural resources and how we cherish and nurture the land as stewards, as farmers. And with that, we get our soil tested, we get our water tested. Here are those results. But I beg you to come onto the farm now. And then from there, she's like, no, it's right, I'm fine, thank you. And the visit. Not only was it the end of the visit, she said, you know what, I'm
I'm gonna go ahead and prescribe you some formula. Even though we were exclusively breastfeeding. So, moving forward, how do we get Bidii baby foods into the hospitals? Into the pediatric unit. So a year later, exactly a year later, a nonprofit had bought Bidii baby foods because now we're certified. We have our food trainings, we have our farm risk assessment all in place. And moving forward, now our product is packaged and manufactured in a commercial kitchen site. Unfortunately, we don't have that type of infrastructure on the Navajo Nation, but that's what we're working towards. So with that, the nonprofit had bought some 400 packets of Bidii baby foods, donated it to that same pediatric unit, and gave it away for free to all the families that went through that unit for their 6-month checkup. Only a year later. So that's the type of change that we want. That's the type of innovation of breaking down these systems of oppression. Not, I'm gonna go start a protest on the streets. No, we gotta be a part of the system, adapt, and move forward with that through entrepreneurship that allows us to innovate, allows us to grow with that creative mindset. So, yeah.
What was the question again?
Question. Her question.
Yeah, going from tabletop to, yeah, so what I was gonna share just real quickly, it doesn't really apply to me per se, because I'm in another area, although it probably could in some ways, but what comes to my mind is that in the work that we do as entrepreneurs, as liaisons, we are networking, we are connecting with entrepreneurs that are out there, and we already know entrepreneurs who have been doing that work for decades, many of them in the arts field. And so one of the things that I think is that we are discovering and we can make other people aware of the fact that others have already done that. Others have gone from the tabletop to trade shows, to bigger shows, to selling their art or to individual, either to their own buyers or to individual collectors. And so one of the neat things that I think we're going to be able to do as liaisons is capture some of those success stories so that the people become more and more aware of the fact that, yes, it can be done, and this is how it has been done, and you can do it too.
Scott. Audience, you have one more question? Yes. Let me get you the microphone.
I'm Anna Tomlinson. I'm originally from Serbia. I know a thing or two about being outside of the mainstream, especially since we were demonized in the media. But what I want to know is you all value culture, your respective cultures. Your languages are in jeopardy of extinction. And how do you think we can work to preserve the language to keep that connection through the businesses that we have? Thank you.
I think actively how we practice that ourselves, and this is, I think that everybody has their own individual answer. For me, myself, like I said, growing up, I didn't really communicate in English till I got to preschool. My preschool had to communicate with me in order for me to understand, because there were a lot of words that we didn't understand. It was English was there, but it was broken. And so going forward, how I incorporate that language with my children is from a very young age. We show them items when we're talking in the household. We have full conversations in Navajo, and they pick that up. They pick that up, and a lot of the individuals that I work with, and basically going out into the community and me going to go find my clients that I work with, they're the main ones that have that language barrier because they do speak Navajo. They don't speak English. They can't read or write in English. We still struggle with that now. So I think one of the main things that we can do to continue to incorporate our language is as parents and as, you know, advocates for our community is practicing our own, you know, conversations in our own native tongue and encouraging each other to learn, just like Scott said, you know, even in his own native tongue, he struggles with it. And so with my siblings, I have 10 siblings, and I was raised separate from them. And when they try to have conversations with me or my family members, we don't laugh about it. You know, we simply encourage them. If they pronounce something wrong, we'll just, you know, reiterate it and say, yeah, which you know, this is how you do it. And take it to a positive approach, like, you know, and the same thing with our children. We have that choice now in schools to say if we want them to go to a Navajo language class. My son is 7 years old, and he gave up going to gym to make sure that he was taking Navajo class. So there's always that. And then also just in your own home, practicing that. And one thing that I'm advocating for now, even with our local banks, because I have worked in banking, like I said, and have worked in these communities enough to know that there's not enough awareness for the Navajo language, is making sure that we're holding our banks accountable for making sure that they make literature available in Navajo. So I think that part of it is being an advocate to make sure that our communities understand that the communication, as far as advertisement and anything that they're putting out there also needs to be in the native tongue for our community members to understand it.
Could I just introduce one idea? For those languages which are not, you know, in written form, it's okay. You can have audio things too nowadays. We don't have to preach and reduce them to code.
Yeah.
They can continue to exist the way they should, right?
Yes.
The way
So-
people want.
Yeah, audio is one, and then literature to where they could read, but also to where that's like a teaching mechanism for us to show our children, you know, and show other people. But we're so diverse in the sense of in Gallup, we have Zuni that's 45 minutes away, and then we come this way, it's Laguna, Acoma, so it's so diverse, and that's where we have to be careful with it, but being an advocate and then just also sharing your experience.
So at Taos Pueblo, in my home community, we are an oral traditional culture. We just as it's been, we don't write down our language. And the language is spoken up at the village, in our ceremonies, in our traditional doings. And as a business, that's why I created Bison Star, is to create opportunity at home where there is none, so that way I could stay at home, so I could participate in our culture and tradition on a daily basis, weekly basis. And with that, I'll be able to continue this oral tradition. And that's just because, unfortunately, our tribe hasn't embraced audio recording. You know, we don't allow any video recording of our traditions that are open to the public. We don't allow any of that stuff. And that's just due to our strong cultural beliefs of passing down this language person to person, you know, rather than a computer or any other kind of device. And I respect that. That's just the culture, you know, and thankfully, as younger generations come into power, there'll be more progressive thinking to preserve our language and new modern ways embracing technology. And so creating a business at home to be able to prevent brain drain from my community so I can participate and my family can participate. And then I guess the second way that a business could encourage language retention is by volunteering in and monetarily contributing to language programs that are currently in existence for my community at Taos Pueblo. And so those are the two ways that Bison Star Naturals contributes to Taos Pueblo Red Willow language retention.
Thank you. Did you have a response?
So for us, I think you see immediately it says Bidii baby foods in the language of the Navajo people, but I would say Diné people. Navajo is from a Spanish translation, so we're Diné. And when I introduce myself in Navajo in the Diné language, then the net translation is the people. So it doesn't say the people from the Four Corners area that live along the San Juan River or the brown folks that come from that area. It's the people. So who's all in this room tonight? The people. And so you're probably wondering, like, well, will that spiritual food work for me as medicine? Of course. This is all of our, you know, this is all of our earth. This is all our water. This is all of our sky. We are the Bilashklai people, the people that walk between Mother Earth and Father Sky. How do you cherish that? How do you preserve that? And your question, we immediately establish it in our products. If you look at our website at bidiibabyfoods.org and you go through our products list, you'll see that each of our products has Diné language first, Diné Bison first, and then an English translation second. And we got scrutinized for that by the manufacturing permittees by New Mexico State. They said, we don't want English first. We don't want Diné language first. We want Navajo, or we want English first.
Isn't that your constitutional right?
Right. In order to adhere to that permit,
I know.
we have to do either a bigger, bolder color of English or, lax on the language. Which is, again, leads to how we as problem solvers are able to combat that by getting more voices and more businesses to then be a part of that, go through that process and change it. So it's chess, not checkers in that term, in preservation. And so please do take a look at our website, and that way you can definitely see how we incorporate the culture and language into not only our practices of the creation of the product, but also how we are teaching our youth.
And just real quickly, I think the way that one way that I envision doing that is I have a vision for more of our native people to be trained in this skill of coaching. And what's going to happen when that takes place is some of those are going to be native speakers, fluent. And they're going to be able to work with others who are native speakers, and that's their first language, or at least they're fluent in their language. And so they're going to bring the power of coaching really, to help our people in that context. I was working with an individual in English, but he was his first language Navajo. And as we were working and doing some coaching, we were talking about something, and he was saying what he was thinking in Navajo, but I could tell it was important. And so I stopped him. I said, what does that mean in English? Because I wanted to connect, and I wanted to make sure I was understanding what was going on. And he said, it can be done. But it's so vital in coaching for that connection to be able to be made. I can't coach somebody in Spanish because I don't know Spanish. I can't coach anybody in any of our over 500 languages because I don't know that. But the more people we have trained as coaches, the more life change that can take place. Even the poor coach.
Thank you. Rich, I wanted to have you conclude our session today with any reflections and maybe something to our live panel. This is the first time we've all been together in one room. We've done this on Zoom, but live.
Well, thank you very much for the responses that you've provided to us this evening, the insights, your motivations, all your drivers, your passions. You hear it in your voice, you hear it in the phrases that you're using and you're sharing. And so it's very enlightening and inspiring and encouraging. And, I want to be able to also point out one of the things that I think, Scott, you were the one that made mention when we're talking about strength, is one of the strengths you see is choices. Right now, I think that's an incredible strength that we don't necessarily think about. And the reason I say that's really important is that we've allowed in the past others to make the choice for us. You have a choice to pursue entrepreneurship. You have a choice for a different future. As they say, in our tribal communities, right? Who do we work for? We're working for those that are waiting to come into the world. That's who we're working for. That's our purpose, right? And so as I thought about that choice as a strength, we all have that choice, right? You can choose to do nothing. You can choose to just be good, or you can choose to be great. It's up to you. Right. So the other thing that I think is really important, and as we went through the strengths, art and culture being a strength. I would extend that to all of you to think about art and culture, not only as he mentioned, like sand paintings or the pictures of the wall, but the art of genius. The art of intellect. We've all been gifted with that. Don't be afraid of it. Your art of creativity, curiosity. Right? Use that in the building of your businesses. Experience was the other thing that came out. Experience is so critical. Not only in your tactical and strategic and work experience, but the experience of your heart, the experience of mind. We're also taught your principles, your value, all our principles and values. Those are all assets. Last, sustainability. Sustainability, we're still here. We're still here. All this history, all the way back to the Entrada of Spain, Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, everything. We're still here. Right? And so sustainability is critical. But also, the way I would also look at it is sustainability is let's not put ourselves in the glass of formaldehyde and we remain the same all the time, but we're continually regenerating. You're regenerating your knowledge. You're regenerating your curiosity. You're regenerating your passion. So these are really critical things that I think came out, at least in my mind, and what I heard you say today. And so as we wrap up here, I encourage everyone to go forward from a place of strength, not deficit. Go with a passion for what you're great at. Right? As Mark Cuban says, you can be passionate about something, you can chase your passion all day long, but if you suck at it, you're not gonna have any, capabilities, right? Passionate about what you're really great at. From that's when you breed your passion. Right? So I would really encourage that. And then lastly, leave the ladder down. Leave the ladder down. Right? So that's really important. For Lisa and Sandra, thank you very much for putting this together. Awesome. And so we'll conclude and go this far today. We wish all of you well. The liaisons that are here, please do not hesitate to utilize them. I got the chance to sit with Scott. We had a chance earlier with Angelo to sit at the table and pick his brain a little bit, or him picking her brain, and that was very interesting. So I hope I get a chance to sit with the other two liaisons, and face to face a little bit more. But all of you take advantage of them. Yeah, some really great assets here. So with that, as we say in our language, say hope on the other heart center, go next to Ocean, we're trying to start from the field. So with that, my regards, for all of you. As you go on your way, be safe. Continue to work hard, be strong in all that you do.